We are super excited to have another monthly installment of our Health Is Call. Here at Quality Life, our mission is to change one life so they can change many. And we're joined here today with Will Johnston, former Division One athlete, Navy SEAL, and just all around great guy. The reason we do these calls is to really inspire responsibility for individuals to take control of their own health and wellness and therefore it can be an example of health and wellness in their community. Health, wellness, happiness, fulfillment, joy, all these things are a choice in our lives. And really we try at Quality Life to put as much information, what like science reviewed, peer reviewed, real information that kind of cuts through all the clutter that's plaguing the health and wellness industry right now. Try to get that information to people in a accessible way, in a free way, and then in a really, really productive way. So in the chat, if you're on this call or if you're listening or to a recording of this, I just want you to think like, what is health? Like our calls are called Health is blank. What is health to you? If you have a second, drop it in the chat. As people are dropping in the chat, I'll say some of the responses we've gotten in the past is wellness, health is balance, health is optimization, health is not being tired anymore or being tired all the time. That's one that kind of resonated with me and my health journey of how I was suffering from chronic fatigue for a long time. Um, Health can be anything. Health can be community. It could be friends, family, friendship, anything that fills you up in a mental way, physical way, emotional way, spiritual way. Any of those things are going to be what we talk about in in these calls. For this month specifically, health is mindset. And as I said, we have Will Johnston here. I want him to kind of introduce himself. If you're all right with that, Will, give a background of where you grew up, where how you became what you are today, maybe some milestones along the road. And then we're really going to open this up, kind of pepper you with some questions between Tate and myself, and then open this up to the floor if people want to drop questions in the chat. I have a few questions that people have emailed to me that I'm excited for you to answer. And I'll let you take it away. Thanks, Will.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on. Glad to be on with you guys. Love you both. So yeah, just my background. I grew up in Richmond, Virginia. Grew up with seven sisters, so that was a amazing experience. I have no other words for that. So from there, went to college at Virginia Tech and played basketball there for 4 years. Started as a walk-on and earned a scholarship sophomore through senior years. And then plan was to go on and play professionally overseas. I knew I wasn't good enough to play in the NBA, so was planning on playing in either Italy or Spain. And my senior year, my head coach gave me a book on Navy SEALs. And fate should have it, that is what I wanted to do. And just changed the course of my life when he gave me that book. So went into the SEAL teams, did that for 5 years, got out in 2020. And obviously that was the COVID time and was trying to figure out what I was going to do. And basically landed on sport and performance psychology. And University of Denver has a top program in the country. So came out to visit, had a couple of buddies out here at the time and loved it out here and started getting into that. And past few years have been working with athletes, working professionals and performers across all domains and sport and performance psychology and helping them enhance their mindset so that they can think better in order to perform better and experience fulfillment and happiness in what they do.
Amazing. Will, I've got a few questions that I want to kind of branch off from that. Obviously, you have a pretty in-depth experience and background as far as the athletic realm and then just kind of high performance goes in general. What got you interested into the field? What was kind of that moment after getting out of the SEALs to where you went and told yourself, I want to go down the sports psychology route? Do you have any past experiences or really what led to that?
Yeah, so my freshman year when I was playing basketball at Virginia Tech, I experienced anxiety and I didn't know what it was, never had experienced it before. And it was just a combination of playing in front of huge audiences, like at Duke or UNC, and all this pressure on me, added school workload because I was pre-med at the time. And so I went to our team's sports psychologist and didn't really get much help, just had me fill out a worksheet and, wasn't very helpful. So I saw a void. And then also, I think part two, which is more of a significant factor, was when I went to become a SEAL, we started our class with 209 guys and finished with 9. So 200 of some extremely, extremely physically fit guys dropped out. And you kind of start to ask yourself, what was the difference maker in that? And to me, I landed on the mindset. And I know that the mind drives all performance and everything that you're doing. And I saw that firsthand through that experience. So from there, I was like, I'd love to give back. I know a few things from personal experience. I'm going to go get my training, academic education in that so I can go help others that may not relate with what I've learned and what worked for me. So yeah, that was what put me down that path.
And your experiences don't apply to just the athlete realm. Obviously, it applies to all high performers. And what would you say is kind of the biggest kind of differentiating factor, or what is the most powerful characteristic trait that kind of all these high achievers that you work with and that you have noticed throughout all of your experiences? What's that most powerful characteristic trait, and how can we apply it to our lives?
Yeah, I think it's a bit subjective, obviously. There are many that are extremely important, but I think one that I see across the board consistently at the top of that list is grit. And grit, what that is by definition, is passion plus perseverance. Angela Duckworth came up with that definition. She spoke on it, has done a few TED Talks, and has written a book on it as well. And so before I get into how to apply that to your life, let's just break that down a little bit. So passion, that's just an intense enthusiasm or interest for something that you're involved in. And so whatever that passion for is, doesn't really matter. It's just that intense, deep enthusiasm and interest for what you're doing. So that in combination with perseverance, which I define as an unwavering commitment towards a long-term goal. So having that intense enthusiasm and unwavering commitment towards a long-term goal, that is grit. And so how do we apply that to our lives? So basically, in simple terms, it's just increasing passion and or increasing your perseverance for something that you're doing. And so if you're trying to increase your passion for something, it is finding something that you're interested in. What are you enthusiastic about? What sparks an interest in you when you look at that particular subject? Now, if it's something that you really don't want to do, some task like how do I exert or exemplify grit on some, just say like I have to do data entry for the next 3 hours for my job. Clearly, that's something you're not going to just become passionate about. But how can you tie that job to something that you are passionate about? What about your work are you passionate about? And how can you connect those things together to maybe tie it back to what you enjoy about your work or enjoy about, or maybe it's tying it back to your purpose. So that's increasing your passion. And I think a last resort is if you really can't find anything that you're interested about or having a hard time tying it back to your purpose, one thing that I think is extremely effective is knowing that we have this area of our brain. It's called the anterior mid-cingulate cortex. And that part of your
That's a tongue
brain,
twister.
it is, it is. It's something I say a lot because I'm like repeating it to myself. I'm not trying to do something and want to be able to want to do it and, exemplify that grit. So anterior mid-cingulate cortex, it was actually on a Huberman podcast recently with David Goggins. And when you really don't want to do something, but you just do it anyway, that area of your brain grows. It's really just like the willpower area of your brain. And so when I can't find something I'm interested in, something I'm passionate about this task, and I can't tie it back to my purpose, I really just think about, okay, this part of my brain is going to grow. And then the next time I do it is not going to be as difficult. So that all tied back to how to increase your passion. And then the other part is increasing your perseverance. Again, this is how to apply this in your life. And so, how do you persevere through something that may be overwhelming or stressful or challenging? I mean, we're going to face stressful and challenging situations every day in our lives. So, how do we persevere? One story I like to bring up is when I was in Buds, which is SEAL training. So one of the most difficult parts of Buds is Hell Week. And in Hell Week, you're going for 5, 6 days straight without any sleep. It's 24 hours a day, complete physical activity, getting cold torture, no sleep. The only time you get a break really is when you're eating. And even then, sometimes they're spraying you in the face with water. It's just no moments of comfort. So how do you persevere through something? Obviously, that's at the highest example of one of the more difficult things you can do. How do you persevere through that? And the way that I did that was a process called segmenting. And what segmenting is breaking that entire thing down, whatever the task may be, into manageable segments or chunks or periods of time. And so that way, you know that you can get that part done. So for me, if I thought about that entire week, everything that I was going to have to do, it would have been too overwhelming. I would have quit. But I broke it down to let me just make it to the next meal. And so I knew that I was going to eat every 6 hours, or maybe that 6 hours is too much, which a lot of times it was. So then I'm just going to make it. I just see a lamppost up there. We're going to run to that. I'm just going to make it to that lamppost. So breaking everything down into something that's manageable in that moment, there's nothing that's too overwhelming, too stressful, that's going to get you to quit or to not be able to do what you want to do if applied to a work setting. But breaking it down into those manageable chunks. And when you do that, there's no limit to what you can do. And so just to recap on that long-winded answer to your question, Tate, grit is passion plus perseverance. How do you increase both? Passion, find something you're enthusiastic about, tie it back to your purpose, or last case scenario, know that it's growing that willpower aspect of your brain. Perseverance, segment into manageable time periods, chunks.
I love the term segmenting or the process segmenting. It's something that I apply to some of kind of the endurance events that I do. And just for everyone out there, kind of something that you can think about as you're doing that is what is the smallest action that I can take towards this first little goal? So if that is as simple as putting your shoes on, go do that. And what's the next smallest action you could take? And that's something that I try to apply to my life. And I know that we have talked about in the past there before, Will. And then kind of branching off of that, obviously mindset is something it's not physical, right? We don't see it, but it's still something that needs to be trained just like our physical muscles. And kind of what the quote is mindset is a muscle. You have to actively dedicate time to trying to improve your mindset. It's not something that's just going to come along and one day, oh man, I increased my perseverance, or I found that passion and I really stuck with it today. It's something you have to actively choose to do day in and day out. But I think one of the hardest things that I know myself and a lot of our quality of life clients, and I'm sure a lot of yours and everyone on this call has trouble with, is how do you identify those limiting and kind of empowering beliefs and mindsets that you need to work on in the first place?
Yeah, great question. So, what I think everything starts with in this regard is self-awareness. So, identifying whether it's a limiting belief or an empowering belief or mindset or behavior, you have to have self-awareness and awareness of that thing so you can identify that number one, it is limiting or it is empowering. And so that begs the question, how do I create self-awareness? And I think the number one tool to do that is through a reflective practice. And so there's tons of different reflective practices that you can get involved in, but the one that I teach to the performers I work with is it's a three-part thing. And really it can be broken down into just two parts, but I like the third one. But the first thing is what three things went well today and why. That why aspect is crucial because when you just say what went well, you can just start getting into Oh, it was sunny, and it really just turns into like a gratitude practice. So what went well and why? How did I contribute to that? Three things for that. The second part is what two things do I want to improve upon and how will I go about it? So not just, oh, I want to be better at this and then leaving it at that. How are you going to go about improving at that thing? And then the third part of that reflective practice is what did I learn about myself and why is that important? And so I have all the athletes and working professionals that I work with engage in that practice because it not only develops that self-awareness, but also is the number one factor for learning and growing on a daily basis. And so as far as, identifying these limiting or empowering beliefs, it could be that you notice as you go out your day, you come to the end of the day, reflective practice, and you're like, what two things do I want to improve upon? Okay, well, I noticed going into this meeting with, a couple dozen other successful people, I thought to myself, I'll never be successful. And I realized by, I'm engaged in this reflective practice, it's helping me identify these things that I believe in. And it's not just about beliefs, it can be about literally anything. Could be, I want to improve my time management. And how am I going to go about that? Well, I'm going to use time hacking. That's just an example. But as far as the beliefs one, I'll never be successful. So how will I go about improving that? So it's just, okay, I'll never be successful. Why is that something that I thought? Well, maybe it's because it gives me some sort of control. So when I'm not successful, I can go back in and, justify it, rationalize it in that way. So just coming back to your question, how do you identify them is first is awareness and then engaging in a reflective practice where you can see which beliefs, mindsets, behaviors are empowering and which are limiting.
So bring awareness through a reflective practice with three phases, and that's what are three things that went well today and why?
Mm-hmm.
What two things do I want to improve on and how do I go about that is the second one. And then the third one is what do I want to work on and why is that important? Are those correct?
What did I learn about myself and why is that important is the third
What did I
one.
learn? What did I learn about myself and why is that important? Perfect.
Yep.
And then something that I know that you all talk about in True Path and Larry talks on quite frequently is this desired end state. And I think that that's something important that in order to have this reflective practice and in order to start identifying your limiting beliefs, behaviors, or your empowering beliefs, behaviors, and mindsets, you also have to know where it is that you want to go. What is that desired end state for you so that you have something to reflect on. Could you speak a little bit about this desired end state and potentially what that is and how people can go about? I'm sure that you have some sort of practice or method that people can go about trying to learn and figure out what their desired end state is, and then apply that reflective practice to it.
So learn or unlearn? Sorry, I misunderstood you.
To learn about that desired end state, or really what is their North Star that's guiding them through their daily, beliefs, behaviors, mindsets.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I think again, everything starts with awareness. In order to be able to change something or want to do anything about what's going on with your beliefs, mindset, you have to have that awareness to identify this is limiting me or this is empowering me. And so
Mhm.
once you have that, it is understanding that what beliefs that you're having are formed through some prior event. So obviously in True Path, for those that are familiar with that, what Larry teaches in True Path is that some former event teaches you a lesson. And then through reflection, like I was just talking about reflective practice, you learn a lesson and that becomes your strategy going forward. And so through that strategy, you begin to apply it in all these various environments. And when you apply that strategy, that mindset, that belief, that behavior, an environment that's not conducive to the one that you learned it in, that's when you run into those struggles and it becomes a limiting belief or you suffer, things don't go well. And so understanding that, number two, after that awareness piece, once you have that awareness of it, it's limiting or it's empowering, you understand that piece of, okay, this is why this belief or this stance has come about. The way that you change it is, I like two strategies. One of them is a little lesson called flip the coin. And so a lot of times we see a coin, so a coin like a heads and a tails. A lot of times through the ways that our brains are wired, we're wired in a way that we are habitual creatures. We see things in the same way. If we see a scenario, we'll apply it to another. And the way I use this flip the coin analogy is that we get stuck on one side, whether it's a heads or a tails. We just see that one side. Whereas if we were to just catch ourselves through that awareness, okay, I'm going down this track of I am on this limiting belief I've identified through this reflective practice. I know I'm thinking this. I just don't know how to get away from it. Well, tell yourself, literally, you can say it in your mind, flip the coin. How else can I look at this scenario? What other way would be productive for me to have this mindset or this belief or this behavior? I'm just going to flip the coin and look at it in a different way. So it's just a helpful little metaphor analogy. I think metaphors are extremely helpful because they're put like a little visual to what you're trying to think out in your mind. And so flip the coin is one way that you can unlearn and relearn these different beliefs, mindsets, behaviors. Another one is break the loop. So again, you have that awareness. I'm going down this track. I'm thinking I'll never be successful, or I'm not worthy of this happiness, whatever it may be. You stop, tell yourself, break the loop. And it's just like you're going down this like loop. You're looping in it and you're just continuing on this cycle of negativity or bringing yourself down or limiting yourself. And if you tell yourself, break the loop, then you just are able to find a way just to get out of it. And then when you say break the loop, it forces you to answer the question of, okay, where am I going to take this loop towards? And then you start looking at more productive ways of looking at it.
It's a lot of good information on how to bring awareness to and identify the limiting beliefs and behaviors. What about how do we reinforce the ones that are kind of empowering and kind of move us one step closer to that desired end state? Kind of one that you mentioned is kind of segmenting when you were in buds. Do you have any other examples such as that of kind of how did you reinforce the ones that helped you to pursue or to persevere through buds?
Well, the way that I enforced even that example that he's provided, the segmenting, was through my reflection. And it was that
Mhm.
first part of the reflection. What did I do well and why? And so you start thinking back on those mindsets, behaviors, beliefs that you have throughout your day. Okay, that went well. Why? And so by adding that why component, then you really start to ingrain that in your mind. And so the next time you're in that situation, you're in that environment, you've ingrained that in your subconscious and it's become part of your subconscious, or you've moved it from your subconscious to your conscious. And because of that, just like the way that we're wired, once these things start wiring the brain cells, your neurons, these pathways, they just start to repeat themselves, and that's when it becomes habitual. So you reinforce it through that reflective practice. Ah, that was good. I want to continue doing that. So you're in that situation again. It's just that reinforcement.
Awesome. Great. And then along with kind of what we have talked about up to this point, obviously we've provided a lot of good information and tools that people can use. Do you have any other tools that the high achievers that you work with use to train their mindset, mentality, and kind of perform at their peak day in and day out?
Yeah, I would say two of them are the most important. And the first one is visualization or mental imagery. And what that does is simply prime the body and mind how to think and behave in a way that you want to, right? So there's a difference. I feel like a lot of times people hear visualization outside of the sport context. I think athletes kind of understand it, but working professionals or people that have never really heard the term, they think of, I'm going to manifest this. So like I want to attract a partner or a job that I want or whatever it is. I'm just going to manifest and visualize it. Manifesting that it is a thing. I haven't studied it, and that's not what I'm referring to. So I just want to distinguish what I'm referring to. And what I'm referring to is sitting down in a comfortable spot, closing your eyes, and using your senses to see, hear, feel, even smell and taste, if you're able to reproduce those senses, to recreate this environment of what you want to behave like, how you want to think, how you want to feel. And by doing it in your mind, the same areas of your brain are activated as when you're actually doing it. So they had basketball players visualize themselves shooting a free throw, and then they hooked them up to these wires and sensors, and then they had them on the court doing it. And they found that the exact same areas of the brain were activated when they were visualizing it as when they were actually doing it, which is crazy. It just really goes to show that your perception and your experience of reality is reality. And so I think it's such an important tool because it allows you to do what you want in your mind, behave in a certain way, respond to a certain situation in a certain way, think or feel in a certain way, whatever you have going on in your life, in your mind first, so that when you're doing it in actuality, it's just deja vu. And so I actually was at a wedding this past weekend and was talking with one of my really good buddies. He's at SEAL Team 6 right now. Was asking him like, what are you doing right now to help you like stay at the top? Because I mean, Team 6 operators are at the top of the top. And what he says he does is after every house run, so clearing a house, whether searching for a hostage or taking out a terrorist, he does these practice in his mind. He'll write down in his notebook a reflection practice, what he messed up on, what he wants to improve upon, and then he'll literally walk through it in his mind and even try to like act it out in his living room. And so it just really reinforced in my mind, like the top of the top performers are using this like on a consistent basis. You're seeing yourself do it, and then when you go out in real life, it just makes it all that much easier. So visualization, I think, is a top tool, and happy to provide some resources, maybe in an email for people that really want to get into it. But visualization, one of the two tools. The other one is, I wouldn't say really a tool, but like a strategy that I think is so key for high performers, and that is self-regulation. So, what's self-regulation? That's just the ability to manage or control your thoughts, emotions, impulses, behaviors, habits, all that above. Being able to control and manage the way that you respond in those types of situations. So think about being able to self-regulate at 100%. You don't give in to any impulse. You behave exactly how you want. You think how you want. You feel how you want in accordance to a situation, right? That's the dream. If you can self-regulate perfectly, you're living exactly the life that you want. And so how do you learn how to self-regulate is the key. And obviously it takes time and it's not easy off the get-go. But number one, again, guess what? It's awareness. So coming back to that piece always, cultivating that strong sense of self-awareness is always number one. And number two, I feel like you can't avoid that reflective practice, because when you reflect back on how you acted in the past, some of the impulses you may have given into or ways that you behave and that you didn't want to, if you don't reflect back, you're just going to continue repeating that process over and over and over again until hopefully eventually you learn that lesson. And one of the key ways I teach the people that I work with on how to do this is through a practice called the belly breath superset. And I learned this through another SEAL and a fighter pilot and like a strength coach. They taught us this when I was finishing my SEAL training. And what it involves is literally just sitting in your chair, getting comfortable, sitting upright, and all you do is just close your eyes and just do a body scan from head to toe. You're not trying to change anything. You're not trying to judge anything. All you're trying to do is just notice what's going on in your mind. How am I feeling right now? What am I thinking? What kind of things are coming up in my body? What sensations am I feeling? Do I feel warmth in my left foot? Do I feel tightness in my glute? Is my back a little sore? Again, you're not trying to change anything. You're really just scanning the full body to notice. And what that does is that builds that self-awareness. And once you finish that body scan, you start on it's called the belly breath superset. You're just belly breathing for one inhale. Second inhale, you're tensing all parts of your body. So your legs, your glutes, your core, your arms, even your face. And then on your exhale, you're just releasing that tension. And so what that shows you is that number one, I'm aware of everything that's going on in my body. Number two, I can have tension and I can release it. Sorry, that was two and three all in one. I can have tension too. And three, I can release it. And then the end of the practice, we finished with another body scan, just reinforcing maybe there's changes, maybe there's not. That's totally fine. It's just cultivating that awareness. So again, I think this practice is huge in cultivating that strong sense of self-regulation so that you don't give into those impulses. You don't give into that immediate emotional response. You can behave in the way that you want to. I think that is just so key for not only high achievers, but being able to live successful, fulfilling, happy lives.
Well, I absolutely love it. I don't know if you guys saw my face, but I tensed my whole face while I was trying to release a bunch of tension. That was amazing. That actually, I mean, I shouldn't sound too surprised. Like everything that you tell me, that you've told me in the past absolutely works. And that one felt really good. I felt after I released the tension, I was like, oh, my back is way looser now, even just after doing that for 3 or 4 seconds. So
So
I hear there's definitely a theme, a theme of awareness that we're talking about here for sure. But whenever I hear self-regulation, I want to go down this rabbit hole for a second because I think I think there's a lot of people who preach discipline. We all know like David Goggins has a massive following, and as somebody even commented in the chats, like who's going to carry the boat? And he's always talking about like in a sense, I've never read his book. Admittedly, I don't follow a lot of his content, but if I'm not mistaken, the premise of it is a level of self-regulation that I think is a little bit extreme. When I feel like when a lot of people hear self-regulation, they think of control, right? Like I have to control this, I have to control that. I can't do anything that makes me happy, or else I'm gonna mess up, right? Like everything I do has to come from a place of sacrifice and suffering. I, in my opinion, I think that's how a lot of the world views self-regulation. Can you talk a little bit or touch on maybe a distinction between, because I know what you mean by self-regulation, but a distinction between, one end of the spectrum that might be a little bit too sacrificial and suffering based, and the other end of the spectrum is like, I'll say it, like I firmly believe like we're coddling people too much, and we need a little bit more self-regulation in society. So just curious what your thoughts are on the distinction of what you're talking about and what people might think of just extreme discipline.
so sorry, I'm a little confused by the question. So the discipline aspect and how does that tie into self-regulation and the spectrums of discipline and just being too soft?
No, I think the spectrum of self-regulation from something that's feasible and practical to something that, we read in a book that might be like, yeah, if I have the willpower, I can go run 100 miles tomorrow with no training. Like I think that's a dangerous way that we've heard about self-regulation, whereas I think you've said a lot of practical ways to do it, but I think there's an important distinction between those two types of self-regulation.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think that I think both extremes are a bit unhealthy when it comes to our mental health. Um, which, there's that key distinction between mental health and mental toughness. It's, I want to be mentally healthy and I also want to be mentally tough. And when does that line cross? And so it's a gray area for sure. But I think the difference between the two as far as like mental health is protecting your mind and what is feasible for you. And then mental toughness is just choosing the right attitude when things aren't going your way. So as far as your question, I think a big aspect of that is acceptance. and realizing, like when I say cultivating self-control or self-regulation, understanding that we actually can't control anything. Um, Big distinction that I think I can attest to Larry teaching that, and that a lot of times you hear control the controllables, like what's within your controls, like your response, your work ethic. No, we actually can't control anything. It really is a matter of influence. Yeah, you can influence the way that you think, the way that you respond emotionally, and the way that you feel in a situation, but you really can't control anything. And so I think that's just an important distinction to make. And then also, like I was saying, that acceptance piece. Um, if you accept that things are going to happen to me and it's out of my control, it's out of my sphere of influence, if you will, that really helps kind of bridge that gap between feeling like you need to control everything and then just letting everything happen, that soft, whatever, however you described it.
Mm. Yeah, no, I think that's perfect. That's a perfect distinction. That's exactly where my head was at. Because one of the things, and I mentioned this in the very beginning of the call, is really our goal here is to cut through a little bit of clutter. And on one, we get presented extremes because that's what sells, right? Someone wants to sell a book, they're going to produce a book on an extreme topic or an extreme point of view. And I think it's really, really important for us to remember that actually, like, optimized experiences might lie right in the middle of things and having a balance and thinking, like, when we talk about nutrition with our coaching business, it's always like 80-20, right? If we go whole 30 diet for the rest of your life, that's not something that's going to be sustainable. So I think I really appreciate you making the distinction between mental health and mental toughness. And that kind of plays right into my next question. This is actually from somebody, they messaged me this morning. They were excited for your call and wanted to know, this is their question. During buds, did you ever consider ringing the bell, and what tool or technique kept you from going there? So I think we've kind of learned what tools and techniques that you've done, right? Reflective practices, right? Self-awareness. I really, really enjoyed your talking about flipping the coin, but did you ever consider quitting, right? 200 other people did. In hindsight, what do you think made the difference for you?
Yeah, I did at one point, and it was I remember the exact moment of when it happened. It was Tuesday night, and we'd been going since Sunday morning, so no sleep, no breaks whatsoever. Obviously, again, just to eat quick little bites. And so it's Tuesday night, and we are in the water doing an evolution called surf torture, where you're just getting rocked with freezing cold water over your face.
Is
And
that what we see in the movies? Is
yeah,
that
you see
the
guys like linked arms and like water splashing over them.
Yeah.
Except it
Okay.
was at night, and we're however many days in without sleep, and it's an accumulation of a lot of discomfort all in one. And I remember being like, wow, I could end this right now. I could just get out of all this misery. I still have days to go. Like this isn't ending anytime soon. Like not even, let's just make it to the next hour. Obviously, segmenting is the thing, but like we still have days to go in reality. And what kept me from ringing the bell is how you signify that you're quitting. And the instructors are standing there with blankets, donuts, coffee, just tempting you to go ring it. Was thinking about my family and my sisters, my mom, my dad, I had my two coaches, and my grandpa. Those are the people that I thought about at the time. And I thought about, I really want to make them proud. Like I want them to know that someone really close to them can push past such difficulty and that we have people like this that can protect us. And I just wanted to be that so bad. And it really wasn't for like that validation or, just like I need to show them that I'm this person. And it also wasn't a fear-based thing really of, like I can't do this or else they're gonna think I'm a piece of crap, because that's not what it was at all. Like these people that I just named were the ones that like showed me the most love in my life. And so like I just wanted to reciprocate that. And that was what went through my mind. It was like, I'm not going to touch that bell. And that was the last time I ever thought about it.
That's amazing. That's some good intrinsic motivation. And you and I have talked a lot about that. You dropped the word purpose a few times, I think earlier in the call. And I think when you're intrinsically motivated to do something, there's actual purpose behind it, and things become, I'm not going to say what you did was easy, but I think easier, right? And you know the proof of that is your completion. So congratulations, man. It's awesome talking to you and hearing about all of your mindset, you know, not only tips and tricks, but how you're actually using it in your life. Tate and I are both doing endurance events this year, and I think we've both picked up segmenting as a practice from you through other conversations. So, speaking of that, I love to ask this question. What are you looking forward to in the next let's say 6 months? Though this summer, it doesn't even have to be any mindset stuff we're talking about, but you seem like a really, really interesting dude, and I think a lot of people would love to know what's on the docket. What does somebody like Will Johnston look forward to?
Man, thank you for asking me that. I'm looking forward to, I mean, number one, first and foremost, just like spending time with my wife. Um, we got a couple trips coming up. We got some weddings. We really love to every weekend, like get out and do a hike on a Sunday. Spending time with our dogs, getting to see my family. My mom is remarrying in Costa Rica, so really looking forward to just like family and friends time. I'd say that's first and foremost always. Number two, and can't really talk about it yet until the company is fully public, which will be in the next couple months. But this role I'll be taking over and working with future professional athletes as they go through that, as they finish their college career and then go through the draft process, um, various professional leagues, and then go on to the teams that they're selected by. Just really looking forward to that, knowing how driven that population is. Sometimes you work with people and they're just kind of there because they should be, but these people are really, really driven, and it's just exciting to work with people that really just eat up what you give them, and you see them find success. It's just a really wholesome, fulfilling feeling. So say those are the things I'm looking forward to.
That's awesome, man. I'm stoked for you. The reason I ask that in these types of scenarios is like I said, right? Tate does a lot of our physical fitness coaching. I do a lot of our nutrition coaching. Obviously, you do a lot of mindset coaching, and I think generally when people think of coaches like these, like I do nutrition coaching, but I'm the first person in line if there's ice cream around, right? Like you talk a lot about mental toughness, but it sounds like you're excited to spend time with family at a wedding. Like that doesn't sound mentally tough, but it's just as important to you, right? Like Tate's all
Right.
about working hard and then resting hard, right? He's always like, "Yo, we'll crush you in a workout, but then you need to rebuild it." So I always like to ask that because a lot of times what we're looking forward to is in alignment with our purpose, but not in alignment with people think like, you know, we eat, breathe, and sleep like mental toughness. No, it's good to be self-aware and it's okay to kind of have fun a little bit. I think a lot of people we've lost our ability to have fun. Everything's been too regimented. So Will,
Right.
I really, really, really appreciate your time. I'm sure people are going to get a ton of value out of this. Any last thoughts? You've said so much already, but any like one take home message? What we're gonna do is we're gonna put everything in an email, send it out to our whole entire community. We always ask for kind of three actionable steps, but I think I can pick out three actionable steps from everything that you've already talked about. So if you leave us with a final thought, we'll let you get out of here and probably get some dinner in your belly tonight.
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, I guess I will leave you with a quote that's along lines of something I was talking about in visualization, and that is it's by Napoleon Hill, and that is what the mind can conceive and believe it can achieve. So when you think about that, it's like the mind is so, so powerful. It really is. And if you can see something in your mind and visualize it, and really believe in it, then there's really no limits to what you can achieve. And you see it all the time with people doing just spectacular things. It's awesome to read about and watch and listen. But yeah, what the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. And so it just really enforces that power of using the mind and using it to your benefit.
That's awesome, man. I wrote it down. What the mind can see and believe it can achieve. Did I get that right?
Conceive. I mean, I like to say
Gotcha.
see, but I think Napoleon Hill's was conceive, if I
The
remember correct.
mind can, yeah, what the mind can conceive and believe it can achieve. That's awesome, man. Thank you so much. Next month we got the second Thursday of every month at 5 p.m. We got another super exciting guest joining us. So I'll be sending out stuff for that. You know, as everyone knows, Quality Life is a holistic health wellness company that does everything from fitness to nutrition coaching, blood and genetic testing, high quality meal delivery right to your door, and so much more. So look us up at thequality.life. And again, Will, thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you can conceive and believe everything in your life so you can achieve it. Thanks, man.
Yeah, thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it, Will.
Hmm.